Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. We're really excited to have Don Hall from the Transition Town Network here with us tonight, and he'll be coming to Cincinnati in a week and a half for our two-day workshop, co-hosted with by Green Umbrella, Cincinnati Permaculture Institute, and the Civic Gardens Center. My name is Charlie Gonzalez. I work with Green Umbrella. And many of you probably are familiar with us, but we are the region's climate collaborative, which means that we have a network of hundreds of organizations that collaborate on all sorts of wonderful initiatives that make our region more sustainable, resilient, and equitable for all residents. So initiatives that span the food system to buildings and energy, to neighborhood level climate resilience and more. And we host over 100 events a year, from webinars and workshops to in-person networking happy hours to the big Midwest Sustainability Summit that happens every spring. If you aren't already on our newsletter, I highly recommend it. It's a great way to stay in the loop on all of the cool stuff that's happening in the region around sustainability and climate action, as well as learn about all our members' events and job opportunities and volunteer opportunities. I'm going to pass it to Susan from Cincinnati Permaculture Institute, to say hi and introduce herself. Cincinnati Permaculture Institute is a long partner of ours, and we're proud that they're one of the co-hosts for pulling this event together.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie, and good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here, and we are very excited to be able to promote this. This is one of our favorite things, is building this network. We feel that's one of our pillars that we stand on, is connection, which is what permaculture is all about. And Transition Town came out of permaculture, one of many wonderful initiatives. And I'm really excited and proud of Rachel Cranmer, another permaculture design certification graduate who spearheaded this initiative to bring Don here and keep growing new and wonderful things. We have a newsletter too, Cincinnati Permaculture Institute.org. Go to the bottom of the homepage and sign up for our newsletter that our wonderful marketing director, Felix, who is also here tonight, does a great job of getting the word out. And she also likes to do what she calls the inputs and outputs page, so we can share your news as well. And Felix, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, I think you more or less covered it, and I'm looking forward to the webinar, so I'm not going to take up any of your time.
Yeah, I should say our new PDC class is kicking off coming up here in November. Our flagship permaculture course is a year-long course, and the one from 2025 is just now wrapping up. They'll graduate next on Sunday, and then in November we'll kick off a new class, and it's a very exciting course. We go all over the greater Cincinnati area, visit all different permaculture sites, different exciting places where permaculture is demonstrated, so we can learn and learn how to, lots of techniques and principles and actions, and meet great people. The course always comes with this great community, which is one of the best parts of it. People like Rachel who go out in the world and do great things with it. So thank you. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Susan. And Rachel wears many hats. She's done lots of amazing things in the region. In addition to, like Susan said, being a permaculture, certified in permaculture, she was recently one of Green Umbrella's Climate Action Fellows in this past cohort, helping our local governments with their climate planning. So without further ado, let me pass it off to Rachel, who was really the main focalizer to bring this all together and really was passionate about bringing Don to the Cincinnati region.
Thanks, Charlie. I couldn't have gotten very far with this without all of these great partners who enthusiastically signed on to help host this, some of them knowing about transition towns and most of them not knowing anything about it at all. So I appreciate you all taking the leap on this. Someone else mentioned Rob Hopkins. That was my introduction to this. I was living in the UK a few years ago studying climate and found his books and started reading all of them, including his books on transition towns, which he helped found in the UK. Like maybe a lot of you, I have a bit of worry around the future living under climate change and was really taken with the mission and the methods of this movement that are really rooted in community and focused on joy and building thriving communities, neighborhoods, towns, villages, despite those future challenges. So we talk a lot about community and how people are a resource, but it can feel abstract, and for me at least, not knowing kind of where to start to build that community. So I think that's what really drew me to this movement, and helping to kind of build that confidence, introduce those frameworks, and show countless examples of success across the world, and hopefully connect with people like you and maybe start transition initiatives in Cincinnati. So I was really interested in it. I started reaching out to the transition movement, and was connected to Dawn here in the US, who so kindly sent lots of resources and links to learn more, which I was grateful for. I'm more of an in-person learner, and so I asked more about workshops, and there weren't any coming up in this region. So I asked Dawn if he'd be willing to come to Cincinnati to host a workshop, and he said yes. He will be driving here from Colorado. Well, driving to Florida, he says it's on the way, which sounds like a very Midwestern thing to say. So yeah, was very lucky. Again, having worked a little bit with all three organizations, worked with, learned from over the years, and grateful that they could join. So we have the two agriculture-based organizations, the Cincinnati Permaculture Institute and Civic Gardens Center, which are, a pillar of the movement, but we also have Green Umbrella, who is just a wealth of knowledge, not only around what we can expect for the future in our region, but also providing a mountain of resources and partners that hopefully we can draw from if you start your own transition initiative in your community. So whether you're here for just this introductory webinar or hopefully the 2-day workshop next weekend, thank you all so much for coming. Dawn will take questions at the end, and I'll talk a little bit more at the end about the workshop next weekend if you haven't already registered. But to introduce Dawn, Dawn Hall has worked with a variety of transition branches, including Transition Colorado, is the founder and executive director of Transition Sarasota, the executive director of Transition US, and a training coordinator for the International Transition Network. He is also the author of a book, I have it here, the Regeneration Handbook, which is all about inner transition and how to step up and become a community leader in these difficult times. So take it away, Dawn, and thank you for doing this.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you for inviting me to come to Cincinnati, and to all the partners for getting on board with this. I'm really looking forward to being with, hopefully, many of you in the next couple weeks. I was wondering if I could ask before I get into my presentation, if everybody could just turn on their video for just a minute, if you can. I'd love to see your faces instead of, then at least I can imagine your faces instead of these black boxes on the screen. So yes, wonderful to see you. Smiling faces. All right, and how many of you are currently familiar with the Transition Towns movement? Did you just put your hand up if this is something you're somewhat familiar with? All right, so few and a bunch of new people, and that's all great. So if you are currently familiar with transition, some of this might be review, but probably also you'll hopefully learn a few things. So I'm going to start my screen share. And yeah, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. I've been involved in the transition movement for 17 years now, ever since I stumbled across Transition Colorado while going to Naropa University here in Boulder and doing a master's in environmental leadership. And I was just so inspired by this different kind of activism. I had previously been involved in a lot of anti-war and anti-globalization protests, direct actions, political advocacy. And I think that stuff is still really important and perhaps more important than ever here in 2025. But I also think this kind of regenerative activism that the transition movement represents, one form of, is also really essential because we have to have some kind of vision of the future that we can work towards, not just ways to do less bad. I think we need that to motivate us. I think we need that to show that there are real credible alternatives to the status quo. I like to start off talking about what the Transition Towns movement is by telling the story of its roots and its founding. Because I think it says a lot about this movement, what it is, what it stands for, where it came from, and how this kind of change is a very organic process, that we don't necessarily have all the answers when we get started, but we pick up what we need as we go. So I'd like to invite you to just close your eyes for a moment, and I want to read a short passage from the Transition Handbook, which was written by Rob Hopkins, who's been already mentioned a few times here. And he tells of when he was a much younger man back in 1990, traveling across Europe and Asia, and how he came to the Hunza Valley of Pakistan, this well-preserved indigenous culture, kind of nestled in the mountains, where people were renowned for their good health and vitality. And what he found there was kind of planted the seed of the idea of transition. And just, yeah, see what comes up for you. So he says, here was a society which lived within its limits, and it evolved a dazzlingly sophisticated yet simple way of doing so. All the waste, including human waste, was carefully composted and returned to the land. The terraces, which had been built into the mountainsides over centuries, were irrigated through a network of channels that brought mineral-rich water from the glacier above down to the fields with astonishing precision. Apricot trees were everywhere, as well as cherry, apple, almond, and other fruit and nut trees. Around and beneath the trees grew potatoes, barley, wheat, and other vegetables. The fields were orderly but not regimented. Plants grew in small blocks rather than in huge monocultures. Being on the side of a mountain, I invariably had to walk up and down hills a great deal, and soon began to feel some of the fitness for which the people of Hunza are famed. The paths were lined with dry stone walls and were designed for people and animals, not cars. People always seemed to have time to stop and talk to each other. and spend time with the children who ran barefoot and dusty through the fields. Apricots were harvested and spread out to dry on the rooftops of the houses, a dazzling sight in the bright mountain air. Buildings were built from locally made mud bricks, warm in the winter and cool in the summer. And there were always the majestic splendor of the mountains towering above. Hunza is quite simply the most beautiful, tranquil, happy, and abundant place I have ever visited before or since. So this isn't to say that, we're all going to be living this way in the future, exactly this way. But there was some spark of a vision that came to Rob from experiencing this place and its aliveness that never quite left him. And came back to him years later when he was teaching a 2-year residential course in practical sustainability at Kinsale Further Education College in Ireland. So he was teaching his students how to grow food, how to create energy, how to make medicine, how to resolve conflicts, and how to build with natural local materials, which you see here, amphitheater that this class built for the school's drama students to perform plays. Rob is the happy, smiling guy in the green shirt towards the center. And this course was really based on permaculture. And I know since many of you are connected to the Cincinnati Permaculture Institute, this will be familiar to you. But permaculture, for those who don't know, is a movement that started in the 1970s in Australia, originally a contraction of permanent agriculture. So creating an agriculture that could exist indefinitely and provide for human needs without destroying the natural world on which it's based. And that movement of permaculture has, over the years and decades since, been kind of refashioned as permanent culture. So how can we live as humans without destroying this earth that provides us life? And it's a very holistic system, looking at all different aspects of society, from land and nature stewardship, the built environment, tools and technology, culture and education, health and spiritual well-being, finance and economics, land tenure and community, and much more. This is what's called the permaculture flower. But historically, permaculture has been more focused on the scale of a single farm, an eco-village, a homestead, less so than on whole communities, cities, towns, villages, neighborhoods, and so forth. So as Rob and his students were working their way through this curriculum and learning about permaculture, there was a growing awareness of the urgency of environmental challenges, particularly climate change. And the students wanted to do a project around that, something that would address how their whole community of Kinsale could transition into a fossil fuel-free future. So they decided to create what they called an energy descent action plan. And they looked at all aspects of their local community, including all of these. How resilient were they currently to using less oil, to generating a sustainable future? They established a baseline in all these areas and then visioned forward to 2021 to what is the best future that we could imagine with 50% less oil. And then backcasted, what would we need to do every single year to get there? And this plan was the result of that inquiry. And they didn't think a whole lot of it at the time because it was just a student project. But it was eventually adopted unanimously by the town council of Kinsale as reflecting their plans for the future. And when Rob posted this plan online, he started getting people contacting him from all over the world, asking, how can we do this in our local community? And at that time, Rob had to say, I don't really know. This was created under special circumstances. But the interest was substantial enough that he thought, how could we take this forward? How could we prototype this kind of a process in a organic lived community, not just something like a college situation? And that brought him and his family to Totnes, England, where him and a number of collaborators created the first transition town initiative in the world called Transition Town Totnes. They formed what they called an initiating group to get the initiative off the ground and running, but not necessarily that these would be the people who would be leading this initiative in perpetuity. That they were there to get it up off the ground. And they started doing all kinds of things that really resonated with their local community. They started a program called the Great Reskilling and taught all sorts of both hard and soft skills related to creating regenerative communities. From how to grow some of your own food to how to produce some of your own energy. A lot of those permaculture skills that Rob had taught at Kinsale Further Education College. But it didn't stop there. They started partnering with all sorts of different groups in their community, including working with kids in the local school system to imagine positive futures, vision of a more just and regenerative society. They held about 6 months in a great unleashing where about 10% of their town attended. They had talks, they had music and art and dance, very celebratory affair. And the next day invited participants to come to an open space day, a community discussion using open space technology that helped people to organize into different working groups focused on food, on energy, on economy, healthcare, education, the arts, and so forth, to enable more people to take leadership and organize events and programs. One of their first big projects was called Totnes, the Nut Tree Capital of Britain, where they planted fruit and nut trees throughout the urban fabric and trained volunteers to steward those trees. That's the mayor of Totnes there in the shocking pink coat and the big bling. Apparently that's how they do it over there. They started other projects like oil vulnerability auditing, where they would go and work with local businesses and look at every aspect of their business, accounting for, where they could save energy and where they could reduce their carbon footprint. And they launched a local currency, one of the first in the UK in quite a while, called the Totnes pound, that kept wealth circulating within the local community because it could only be spent at local businesses, which would then purchase their needs from other local businesses instead of shopping at chain stores where that money would get siphoned away to back to corporate headquarters for executive bonuses and shareholders. And this is just some of what they did in the first couple of years of Transition Town Totnes, which was really impressive, and people started to take note of this approach. And some organizations nearby Totnes started emulating what Transition Town Totnes was doing. But there still wasn't a transition movement at this point. It was really just one initiative in one town looking to transition beyond fossil fuels. But as more and more groups started taking on this approach, Rob decided that it was time to write a book and provide some guidance for people who wanted to follow the transition model. So he published the Transition Handbook in 2008. And from there, it really started to spread all over the world. Today, there's about 1,000 different transition initiatives across 70 countries, mostly concentrated in Europe, the UK, and North America, but also starting to spread to South America, to Africa, and to Asia. Rob once talked about transition as being like a detox for the West. So these highly industrialized countries shrinking their carbon footprint and reducing their overall consumption. But I think my experience has been that it can also work in underdeveloped communities to help raise standards, to help raise quality of life. And hopefully there's some place we can meet there in the middle. So every transition initiative is unique, adapted to its local place, to the needs and interests and opportunities inherent in that local community. But there are also some things that obviously bind us together. So one of those things is a set of principles, 8 principles that everybody in the transition movement is in some way aligned with. And the first one is we respect resource limits and create resilience. We acknowledge that we have already overshot Earth's regenerative capacity. That if everybody in the world lived like the average American, we would need 5.1 Earths to support us. We haven't found the other 4 yet. So we need to work within those limits of the planet and find some kind of harmony, sustainability with the natural world. And we need to create resilience because we know that We've already set in motion processes like climate change that will continue to affect us for many years to come. The second transition principle is that we promote inclusivity and social justice. One, because it's the right thing to do. And, even if we're able to create a sustainable future, if it's a future of increasing inequality, that's just not acceptable. That's not the future that we're aiming for. But also, we need to build a movement that is big enough to matter. So we need people from all walks of life to be part of this and to see themselves in this and to take it up themselves, not just, one part of the political spectrum. We adopt subsidiarity, which is a kind of odd word that means self-organization and decision-making at the appropriate level. Basically, what this is saying is that this is a grassroots, bottom-up movement, not some kind of top-down chapter organization where headquarters tells everybody what to do and they just follow. It's really about, when we have national and international organizations, as we do to support this movement, that they're really listening to what the people doing this work on the ground need most, and providing that in in the model of servant leadership. We also pay attention to balance. This is most often talked about as a balance between the head, the heart, and the hands. So we're not only thinking about this and analyzing the problems, coming up with potential solutions, but we're also putting them into action, the hands. And we're also looking at the kind of inner transformation and cultural transformation that we need as a society to support this. We're part of an experimental learning network, which means there's really no one right way to do transition, but that we try a lot of different things out and we learn from each other and we distill best practices down from those experiences of people doing transition in many different contexts. And we freely share ideas and power. This is a very open source movement where we are able to pick up on replicable examples and resources and models from others that we can use in our work. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Particularly on the local level, but at all levels of scale, we collaborate and look for synergies. This is not a siloed approach. This is not us versus them. It's about how we can all come together, pool our resources, bring our different skills and strengths, and create a movement that is bigger than any one organization. And finally, we foster positive visioning and creativity, which seems so important right now, where, we look on the news and all we see are endless problems. But there is a lot of good news out there. And we want to act from a place of hope and possibility, not of fear and reactivity. Beyond the principles, there's also a kind of general model for how to do this transition work that I think is actually quite brilliant. One manifestation of it is the seven essential ingredients, which we often depict as the transition animal, that this is an alive being that has many different aspects to it, all working in a synchronized way. So in terms of the brain of this animal, we're talking about context. So understanding both the global issues that are impacting us all, the global trends that are impacting our communities, and also locally, what are the most important issues that we need to address, and understanding how they're all interconnected so that we can act strategically to address the biggest challenges of our time. The eyes of this animal are there to represent vision. So, really seeing clearly where we want to go, and how all the different pieces fit together, not just in isolation, looking at food, energy, economy, transportation, but looking at those all together. What are holistic solutions that we can create? We pay attention to the inner transition because we know that the source of all change lies within each individual. And the kind of leadership that we can bring to this work is really dependent on us doing our own personal work and showing up as good collaborative leaders. We also place a lot of emphasis on healthy groups because we know how groups work together can really make or break things. That if we have groups that know how to work together, make decisions together, resolve conflicts, and unleash the collective genius, that the work that the kind of change we create in the world is going to be deep and powerful. But if we don't know how to do that, if we are constantly mired in conflict or indecision, there's very little that we can do. So there's a whole kind of body of work around how can we collaborate effectively towards social change. Of course, we need to reach out beyond that core group and engage our community to find different ways to bring people together across traditional divides and really, seek their input to drive this initiative. Of course, practical projects are the most obvious and visible aspect of transition. Actually, making change out in the world. Actually, how can we, help to put good food on people's tables, roofs over their heads, money in their pockets? How do we meet people's basic needs and prepare for an uncertain future? And then finally, being part of a movement, which confers many benefits. We can't do it all on our own. As much change as we could possibly make in our place, it's not going to matter much if we're not part of a larger movement that is seeking to shift society as a whole. No community is an island. So the 7 essential ingredients kind of look at the horizontal aspect of transition. What do we need to be thinking and doing all the time for our transition initiative to be healthy, for the transition animal to be able to move and dance? But there's another axis that to the transition process, which is how do these things evolve over time? The kinds of practical projects that we can do in the beginning when we're just starting out, with very little resources, very little connections, no track record, is very different from what we can accomplish later on when we've cultivated that greater capacity and support. So for the vertical dimension of transition, the dimension of change over time, we have the 5 stages. And that begins, appropriately enough, with starting out. This is where, we're getting our initiating group together. We are starting to put on events, workshops, and we're really just trying out our best ideas and kind of seeing what sticks. In all of these early community engagement activities and throughout this process, we don't want to just be presenting information one way. So if we're hosting a film screening or have a guest speaker, we always want to have time for people to digest that information and find ways to put it into practice. And also provide feedback about what are they seeing that needs to be happening here in this community. What are they really most excited to work on? I'll give a few examples from my own work. This was a picture of an event, one of many, many events that Transition Sarasota put on in the first few years of its existence to draw people in and build a base of support, and also to hear from the community what their priorities are. Here we screened a documentary film that had come out called The Economics of Happiness, and had a World Cafe discussion afterwards about what would an economics of happiness look like for Sarasota. And we did, dozens, hundreds of these events in the first few years, as that's really job one for getting transition off the ground. But eventually, if you just keep doing educational events all the time, there's kind of diminishing returns. People don't just want to sit around and talk about this stuff all the time. We have to get into action and prove that our ideas can actually improve the life of our communities and make a difference in individual people's lives. And the way to do that is by starting practical projects, starting some project or a couple of early stage projects that fit with one's capacity at that level, and have the potential to really open people's minds to what is possible when we work together. So our example of this, our first project for Transition Sarasota, is called the Suncoast Gleaning Project. It actually continues to run to this day and is coming up on about 1 million pounds of local organic produce donated. We bring crews of volunteers out to local farms to harvest any surplus produce that the farmer might have that isn't going to make it to next week's market, and donate that to support the food insecure in our community. Working with local food banks, soup kitchens, church food pantries to distribute this produce. And it's been an amazing project in a lot of different ways, not only for its direct impacts, but the kind of ripples that often come from these kind of regenerative projects. So here, when we first started this project, the local food bank was not dealing with any fresh produce. It was all shelf-stable goods that would keep. But as we started doing this, and as they saw the demand for healthy, fresh produce in lower income communities, they realized how important this was and ended up investing a couple $1 million into fresh produce sourcing and distribution. And this is kind of the fastest growing aspect of their work. We also, a few years after we got started, were contacted by the Florida Department of Agriculture to say we'd like to use this project as a template for pilot gleaning projects throughout the state of Florida. So even small projects like this can have tremendous ripple effects. And one of the biggest things that the Suncoast Gleaning Project did for Transition Sarasota was to build credibility in the community that we could get good work done. And that moved us into the next stage of connecting, which, we're connecting throughout this transition process, but in the early stages, we're mostly connecting with those who are already aligned with what we're doing, that are ideologically aligned, that are very supportive, the so-called early adopters. But once we've built some kind of a track record, some credibility and reputation in the community for doing good work, then doors can open that were not open before. And so connecting in this stage is about connecting more broadly with the whole community, with local businesses, with local government, with media, with funders, and so forth. What this stage looked like for us in Sarasota, we launched 2 major projects following the launch of the Suncoast Gleaning Project that really drew on the trust that we had built in the community, the relationships that we had built, that people were starting to look to us as a kind of focal point for growing the local food movement in Southwest Florida. So this is a picture of one of our county commissioners announcing a proclamation for the first annual Eat Local Week. And some of the organizers, including myself. We're going to have our 15th annual Eat Local Week coming up next month. I've actually been invited to serve as the keynote for that, which is kind of a nice full circle moment. But yeah, every year bringing together dozens of different partners throughout the local food system, putting on dozens of different educational, action-oriented, celebratory events, and really raising the profile of the local food movement in our area. We also, at the same time, put out an Eat Local resource guide and directory that kind of chronicles and maps the whole local food system. And from 2011, when we first launched the Eat Local Guide, to 2016, which was the last year I was there as executive director, the local food system grew by over 270%. And we could track that through that Eat Local Guide. So these kind of connecting activities that bring together larger movement can really have a huge effect on raising the profile of an issue and generating momentum for even bigger changes. So after that, in 2017, I went to work for Transition US, the national hub for the transition movement in this country. I would say we were right on the cusp of connecting and building. We had done some work with the International Slow Money Network to drive investment to local food businesses. But I also think at that time we had some more work to do in the connecting stage, that we needed to continue to strengthen our relationships. Building is really about doing the kind of big systems changing projects that most people get into transition in the first place to do, but which are very difficult to do in the beginning if you haven't gone through all the first three stages. So some examples of that from other transition initiatives around the world. The Victory Garden Initiative from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I heard at the beginning of this event that you all have a Food Not Lawns group. So this might be kind of similar. They were using the model of the PermaBlitz, which came from permaculture, bringing a bunch of volunteers to one site and ripping up lawns and transforming them into edible gardens in the course of a day. Here with the Victory Garden Initiative, which spun off early from Transition Milwaukee, they've now planted over 5,000 gardens throughout the city of Milwaukee. 5,000 edible gardens in just about every neighborhood throughout the city, all with these signs. I pledge to grow more food, victorygardeninitiative.org. So that when you travel through the city, you can see them everywhere, and you can see that the city is transforming into a city of gardens. Going a little bit beyond that, a lot of transition initiatives work on cultivating their local food systems and spurring social entrepreneurship. This is an image from a group called Liège in Transition in Belgium, who started a project called the Liège Food Belt and have since spawned about 15 worker-owned food businesses that are connected together as part of a network and currently receive support from their regional government, who has made growing as much food as possible, as close to Liège as possible, a major priority. A number of transition initiatives from Fujino, Japan to Bristol, England have created their own community-owned renewable energy companies. So instead of that infrastructure being owned by large private corporations with monopolies, they are raising funds from small local investors, sometimes a few $1,000 at a time, and using it to purchase solar panels, to purchase wind turbines, to do great energy retrofitting work. And some of these have grown quite big. Probably the biggest one is Bath and West Community Energy in England, which has raised 22.5 million pounds to date and implemented 34 community energy projects, providing enough power for almost 5,000 homes in that city. Another tried and true transition strategy that I mentioned earlier is creating local community currencies. And besides keeping money circulating locally, these currencies can be a huge symbol of community pride, as they can be very beautiful and feature local luminaries like Transition Town Brixton did here. With David Bowie on the 10-pound note. In Totnes, where this transition movement started, They've taken on bigger and bigger projects over the years. The biggest of these is probably Atmos Totnes, where they have led their community in a process of community-led redevelopment. So instead of letting the big developers decide our future by what makes them the most profit, engaging the community to decide how they want to develop, how they want to move forward. So they did this by gathering thousands of pieces of input from the local community, came up with a plan that to redevelop this 8.6 acre site in the center of town. It was an old dairy factory that's been an eyesore for many years. And the design that they came up with included 62 affordable housing units, 37 retirement homes, a 58-bed eco hotel, arts and music venue, health and wellness center, 76,000 square feet of workspace, and a local foods cafe, all owned by the community and powered by 100% renewable energy. So this is the kind of scale that we can achieve as we go further in the transition process. And I'll just give you one more example, which is from Ungersheim in France. Kind of brings it all together. Their mayor watched one of the early documentaries about the transition towns movement, got excited about this, rallied his whole local government behind it. And over the last 10 years, they've become a fair trade town, banned pesticides and herbicides, shut down a nearby nuclear power plant, converted a former mining site into a nature preserve and park, created an atlas of biodiversity, a local community currency called the radish, and switched over to 100% organic school meals. They've also built the largest solar farm in their region, which provides energy for more than 5 times their village's population, so they're able to export it to other communities. And they've made public lands available for an eco-village, 20-acre organic farm, and 2 communal kitchens. So you can see how all these different aspects can come together to create a real transition town, to really bend the trajectory of that community's future. But as I said before, we can't do this alone. We need to be part of a larger movement that can actually influence things on state, national, international levels. And that's what the 5th stage of Daring to Dream is about. Not just the transition movement, but a much, much vaster movement of movements that people, working for local living economies and local food systems and permaculture and degrowth and many other movements that hold these same kind of vision. If we can create as many of these examples, these kind of beacons of light, this proof of concept for an alternative vision of the future, then we could break into the mainstream media, into the political debates of our time, where these considerations need to be. Because right now, it doesn't look like we have a whole lot of options. Many people are completely unaware of these transformative possibilities, that these are really possible, and that they're actually working in so many places around the world. But can we reach a critical mass where we can start to create a tipping point and lead humanity away from this kind of self-destructive focus on endless exponential growth to a more regenerative future? And that's the whole, that's our hope here, that we'll be able to do that. So just a few last things before we get into the questions. Best way to get involved if you're in the Cincinnati area and you would like to learn more about this, to go deeper into the 7 essential ingredients of transition and learn real skills and tools and frameworks that can help you in this work, come to the training on the 25th and 26th of this month. Beyond that, there's tons of great resources online at transitionnetwork.org. Transition Network International is the global support hub for the Transition Towns movement. There's also a lot of good stuff on my website, which is evolutionarychange.org. You can find out more about me, about the book, what is on offer here for this workshop. And then our partners in this training: Green Umbrella, Cincinnati Permaculture Institute, and Civic Gardens Center. So yeah, thank you very much for listening, and I'd love to hear any questions or comments that you might have.
Thank you, Dawn. That was great. If people want to either put their questions in the comments or do the little hand raise feature and ask your questions in person, that would be great.
Looks like we got one already. Jess?
Hi there. Thank you for taking the time to walk through this. I'm curious to know, I feel like I'm in a number of groups that have been around for a while, but are having trouble like getting off the ground and keeping the momentum. So talking about like the winding path you had at the beginning. I'm going to forget all the stages now, but like getting from starting to like implementing and then creating that trust with the community. Like, what are some ways that you've seen, some effective ways you've seen that done? Because I've been part of groups that are like, all right, we're going to go in and we're going to do this thing for this community, and it doesn't go well because the community didn't want that, and nobody knows what the community actually wanted or needed. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, well, I think one of the principles with the 5 stages of transition is that you have to do enough work in the preceding stage in order to open a door to the next stage. So doing that work and starting out of building a strong base of support, gathering people's ideas and interests, and building trust throughout the community is really essential to be able to open the door to deepening, to be able to, launch practical projects and get buy-in for them. So I think that's really important. Like I said, you also can't wait too long. Early on in Transition Sarasota, we were doing mostly educational events, and we had this documentary film series called 5 Films for a Future, that with each film, there were just more and more people coming, like lots of excitement about this new thing. And we launched another series a couple months later, and participation started going down. And I'm like, why is that? So we could, I could curse that people, where is everybody? People don't really care. They're not supporting. But actually talking to them, a lot of people were ready to move into action. They didn't want to go and hear and have the same discussions over and over again. They were ready to get going. So we launched the Suncoast Cleaning Project, and that brought a huge wave of momentum with it. So there's a lot more to say about how to build that momentum. But yeah, I think, building a strong base of support and then not waiting too long to move into action and kind of constantly stepping it up just a little bit at a time. What can we do to continue to grow our impact? What kind of topics have people, have we not explored yet? What can we do to kind of stay on the cutting edge and keep people interested and engaged? Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Yeah, a lot of groups get stuck in that early stage. I think that's why it's so helpful to have this kind of model to see you don't have to do it all at once, but there's this kind of gradual process that unfolds over time. Right, I see Colleen has her hand up.
So I had a question, just kind of the practicalities of the local currencies. Like how do you start them in circulation in the first place? And then how do you prevent like forgeries?
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of people ask that question about forgeries. It hasn't really been an issue as far as I can tell in some of the most successful local currencies. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that they can be brought into existence. One of really the biggest local currency here in the US is the Berkshires in Western Massachusetts. And the way that they did it was they actually partnered with local credit unions, and people could get one Berkshire for 95 cents of a dollar. So it would actually increase their purchasing power to shift their money into Berkshires as long as they were spending at local businesses. And then to encourage people to keep the bills in circulation, when you changed in a Berkshire, you would only get 95 cents back. So that's one way to do it. The most important thing with local currencies is that people can use them a lot of places and that they can get things that people want so that they can get food, with the local currency, that it's not just for kind of niche needs, like, if you needed to pay a tutor or get somebody to pet sit for you, but that, it's available at a lot of different businesses, that you can use it for a lot of different things. So that Bristol pound that I mentioned was available with 280 different local businesses, and you can use it to pay your energy bills, to pay your taxes. At one time, the mayor took his full salary in it. You could use it to ride public transportation. So having that kind of network set up before launching the currency really has a big impact on its success.
We have a follow-up question from Susan. How do we keep governments from making the alternative currency illegal? Has that ever been an issue?
It hasn't been, and there are very prominent local currencies here in the U.S., like the Berkshires, and that hasn't been an issue up to this point. Of course, we have an administration that's doing a lot of things that haven't been done before. So it's a possibility. I think that one of the great things about the transition movement is that it is so diverse and decentralized, that now we see our government starting to go after the 501c3 statuses of organizations like Indivisible and the Democrat Socialists of America and so forth. I think because of its not being such a centralized network, and also, being something that's really inclusive and community driven, that I think the transition movement has the potential to be very resilient, even in a time where, free speech and protests are being cracked down on.
Charlie had a question that I think would be great. Can you share a little bit about what the 2-day workshop will be like for people who attend? What can they expect?
Yeah, so this is about the most talking I'm going to do. It's going to be a lot of different experiential activities and discussions. There will be some very short presentations going deeper into each of the 7 essential ingredients of transition, into the context and vision and healthy groups and community engagement and so on. But yeah, a lot of it is going to be discussion and doing different activities that help you to practice different skills and to create resources for yourself that will be helpful in work going forward. Like one of the exercises that we do is called the Big List, and it's about partnerships and identifying different partnerships and prioritizing partnerships and getting down to what are our value propositions? How what can we offer these potential partners, and what specifically are we asking from them? So a lot of it is very practical. Towards the end of the training, there's going to be an open space, which I mentioned earlier, which is an opportunity for people to connect with others who are passionate about the same issues and start working together, start brainstorming ideas and projects that they could do together. And then right at the end, we do an exercise around creating one's own personal action plan for going forth. So yeah, it's going to be very interactive and very focused on what are the practical tools and resources that you can take forward from this. All right, got a hand up from Dexter.
Hey, thanks so much.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a lot about this movement kind of being rooted in observations of indigenous cultures and kind of founded on ideas of like decolonization and re-indigenization. So I'm wondering, and maybe this is a question for everybody to start thinking about too, like how do we navigate working within or working with like local businesses and local governments and even certain nonprofits that might be receiving funding from powerful corporations? How do we work with those groups without losing those more kind of radical ideas that are at the center of the movement? And how do we avoid this movement being co-opted by those forces? Kind of a big question, but something that's important, I think.
Yeah. I think there's a couple different parts to that. So yeah, in terms of working with businesses and local governments, transition initiatives stay independent. They will partner with these groups, but it's important to preserve that independence regardless. We're kind of coming from the bottom up, and meeting some of these kind of forces of top-down power, but not being run by them, not being led by them. Yeah, I think it's important to judge who you take money from. Are there strings attached to that? If so, what are they? And is this going to be a kind of situation of the tail wagging the dog, where the money determines the priorities, or do we stay in control of our priorities and let money come to assist that as it does without those kind of strings attached. Transition groups often raise money from earned income from workshops and trainings and practical projects, donations, sponsorships, and grants. And I think if you can keep a kind of diversified set of revenue streams, then you're less likely to get caught in a situation where you're going to compromise your values to survive. And yeah, I think we're the decolonization, re-indigenization question, I think, is a very open one in this movement. It's something that's talked a lot about, not just in the kind of inter-transition spaces, but throughout the movement. What does that mean, and how do we honor the wisdom of indigenous cultures and support indigenous communities, and also without kind of totally turning our back on what can be useful from our modern world that can serve us going forward. That there's been a lot of transition initiatives that have partnered with indigenous communities in their area to great effect. One transition initiative, Cooperation Humboldt, worked with the Wiyot tribe in Northern California to put together a project called Dishmagoo Humboldt, that's a community land trust. And they received $22 billion from the state of California to get started working with at-risk youth, providing housing and job training services. And they're looking to, not stop there, but create worker-owned cooperatives, eco-villages, and so forth. And I think that's a great role that organizations like this can play, not coming with the answers, but supporting marginalized and indigenous communities.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that answer.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Right, I think we might have time for one more question before we have some closing announcements, if anybody's got something burning. And if not, I think we can just wrap up. So I'll pass it back to you, Rachel.
Okay. Well, thank you so much again, Dawn, for doing this webinar in addition to the workshop next weekend. Just a reminder again that registration is still open for the workshop. Tomorrow, early bird registration ends. And then after that, the price goes up slightly. And any if you're curious, any excess money from registration will be used and put in a special account for any of you. If you decide to start a transition initiative, you can draw from that account to fund some of your initiatives. So I hope to see you all there. Tell other people about it. And yeah, anything else, Charlie?
I think that was great. If anybody else has any other questions that pop up, you're welcome to email me or any of us, but I'm easy to reach on email. It's just charlie@greenumbrella.org. The 2-day workshop, thanks again to Rachel for pulling this together, for Don coming out to Cincinnati, to the Cincinnati Permaculture Institute and Civic Garden Center for co-hosting this with Green Umbrella. I wanted to also make sure everybody knows that that $55 registration goes a long way. It also includes lunch for both days. And actually one quick question, if folks happened to if they can only attend for 1 day or 1.5 days, should they still register?
I think so. Yeah, I think as long as you can come for at least 1 day, that makes sense. Saturday, if you can only come for 1 day, I would say Saturday rather than Sunday, because we'll be kind of forming a container as a group and getting to know each other and all that. But yeah, even if you can't come for the whole time, come for part of it.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Don. And hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your evening. And we hope to see you again next in a week and a half. Oh, Susan, what's up?
Yeah, Felix put in the chat that CPI has just decided to tie in registration of this workshop with that upcoming PDC course. So you'll get a full discount on the PDC course per your enrollment in this workshop.
Full discount is a little more generous than what we're offering. That's
I meant,
but
okay.
a small discount is available.
The cost of this transition town workshop will be fully deducted. That's from the PDC course, which is far more expensive than this workshop.
That's really cool though, Susan and Felix. Basically, it's like you're getting a free transition town workshop with your PDC.
Absolutely.
All right,
we
awesome.
always recommend that everybody involved with transition take the permaculture design course. I did mine back in 2008, and it was a hugely life-transforming experience. Yeah, start looking at everything differently.
Mm-hmm. And I'm certainly biased towards the Cincinnati Permaculture Institute's course. It's the one I took, and I'm now kind of co-teaching it. But as it pertains to this transition towns movement, there are many different ways that you can learn permaculture, from books or online courses, or there's free resources out there. But our course is very specifically tailored to our region and takes you through different sites around our region, introduces you to people in our region. So it's not just a great chance to learn permaculture design and the ethics and the theory and how to actually do it, but networking. You meet a lot of the people who are kind of the movers and shakers of things connected to transition projects around here.
Certainly.
Right.
Yeah, and we have such amazing permaculture leaders in our region that are, thanks to CPI's leadership over the years. So thanks for all that you guys do. All right, awesome. Have a wonderful evening, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
See you in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Night.
Thank you.